Can you begin?
Yes, sir.
दुबे सर अब आप अनम्यूट करके बोल सकते हैं.
Okay, I've already unmuted.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Start.
everybody. Thanks a lot for inviting me for a talk. And it seems a little strange to be sitting on the other side and speaking to you. Normally, I invite people to talk. So it seems a little strange. But anyway, I'm going to talk about ethics and moral values. First of all, I plan to uh, talk about these topics in how we see them in the common parlance. And then slowly as we go along, I plan to talk about them in more philosophical terms and so on. So generally speaking, value normally refers to the relative worth or quality of an object. Value is what makes something desirable or undesirable. Through applying our personal values, usually unconsciously, as benchmarks, we continually make subjective judgments about a whole manner of things. We are more likely to make choices that support our value systems than choices that will not. Let's say that financial security is a strong value for someone. When he's faced with a choice of jobs, chances are the individual will carefully examine each organization for potential financial and job security. The job applicant who values financial security may well take a lower salary offer with a well-established company over a higher paying offer from a new high-risk company. Another job seeker with different values, possibly adventure and excitement, might choose the newer company simply for the potential risk and uncertain future. Values, therefore, become part of complex attitude sets that influence our behavior and the behavior of all those with whom we interact. What we value guides not only our personal choices, but also our perceptions of the worth of others. We are more likely, for example, to evaluate highly someone who holds the same hard work value we do than someone who finds work distasteful, with personal gratification a more important value. We may also call the person lazy, worthless, a negative value label. What then of ethics? Ethics are the standards by which behaviors are evaluated for their morality, their rightness or wrongness. Imagine a person who had a strong value of achievement and success. Knowing only that this value is important to them gives us a general expectation of their behavior. For example, we would expect them to be goal oriented, gaining the skills necessary to get what they want. However, we cannot know whether they will cheat to get what they want or do an honest day's work each day. The latter dimension is a matter of ethics and morality. Let's take another example. A person has a high priority value for research in the field of medicine. They have, let's say, a career in medical research. In fact, knowing their value priority, we would expect them to have a career in some form of research. However, we do not know from their value priority how they are likely to undergo their research. Will the person conduct experiments on animals or would they abhor such approaches? Again, the latter is a matter of ethical stance and morality. Concepts such as material success, individualism, efficiency, thrift, freedom, courage, hard work, prudence, competition, patriotism, compromise, and punctuality are all value standards that have varying degree of potency in contemporary culture everywhere. But we probably would not view them primarily as ethical standards of right and wrong. Ethical judgments focus more precisely on degrees of rightness and wrongness in human behavior. In condemning someone for being inefficient, conformist, conformist, extravagant, lazy, or late, we probably would not also claim that they are unethical. However, standards such as honesty, truthfulness, fairness, and humaneness usually are used in making ethical judgments of rightness and wrongness in human behavior. Clearly, our value influence what we will determine as ethical. However, values are our measures of importance, whereas ethics represent our judgments about right and wrong. This close relationship between importance and right and wrong is a powerful influence on our behavior and how we evaluate the behavior of others. One may ask, what are the differences between values, ethics, morals, and principles? One may answer this in short as values motivate, morals and ethics constrain us. In other words, values describe what is important in a person's life, while ethics and morals prescribe what is or is not considered appropriate behavior in living one's life. Principles inform us of our choices of values, morals, and ethics. Let us revisit the distinction between the words ethics and moral values. First, we understand the word ethics to be focused on the way we seek to live our own life, and hence to connote a realistic and essentially subjective perspective, whereas we understand the word morals to be focused on the way we should live our lives together, especially through sensitivity to viewpoints other than our own. Second, we perceive a usefulness in such a differentiation when the ethical value of those in a situation of dilemma are conflicted in order to prioritize moral decisions making in contemporary society. We may say that in our current era, characterized by multiplicity of faiths and by pronounced different values, a philosophical basis for moral decision making needs to be clearly attuned among people. It should be able to determine principles of conduct towards others, no matter how one's own ethical values are. Conceptions of the good or life choices might differ from those of others. In this background, how do we make or how do we take decisions in our daily life when we are faced with problems? And as we all know in our life, all of us from time to time have to take some tough and difficult decisions. And we are often faced with the question, what is the right thing to do? I would like to examine the whole question of how to decide what is right action and what is involved in taking this decision. Is it possible to define certain ethical principles and universal moral values which do not change from society to society or from place to place and are eternal in nature, that is, independent of time? One learned from Krishna that for inquiry into profound question, we must start with observation and not use knowledge and experience which is sitting up there in our memory. This is exactly what I intend to do today. With these concepts in mind, if we look around the world, we find that the concept of what is right and wrong varies from culture to culture, religion to religion, and often from country to country. But if there are universal principles, code of ethics, and universal moral values, we can inculcate those values in ourselves or mankind through a process of self education. When I say education, it is in the broad sense of learning for ourselves, which includes school, college, and university education. Let me begin with an observation of the present state of education in moral values throughout the world. In most parts of the world, it is considered a virtue if someone believes in God, but not so in the communist country, where belief in God and prayer is regarded as superstition. There are societies where sexual indulgence Outside marriage is considered to be a private matter between two consenting adults. But in some countries, one can be executed for this, as it is considered to be a sin at par with murder. We can take any number of examples like this. In the Brahmanical order culture of India, it is considered unethical to eat meat or partake of alcohol or other stimulating drugs. But it is quite normal in others in India and certainly in the West. Certain societies, like ours, deliberately cultivate respect for elders in the minds of young. But throughout the world, many countries don't do that. Thus, at the level of action, moral values differ from one society to another. Thus, it becomes an important question as to how to define universal moral values and which values to inculcate in children when there is no agreement between one culture and another. Indeed, each culture perpetuates the values it has acquired and defined in its social structures. And often its people begin to feel that their values are superior to the values of another culture, and these values become crystallized. Thus, they are perpetuated from one generation to the next because children live in societies in imitation of their values. I'm sure you will all agree with me here, as we were all children at one time. Therefore, these differences in moral values have themselves become a cause for division or conflict or both between man and man. They have become barriers to understanding each other and therefore to the universal brotherhood of man. So, what can be done when there is so much contradiction and confusion because one culture, does not accept the values proclaimed by another? If we look at things historically, these different cultures have developed around different religions because each society developed its norm as people could not travel very far in those days. So each society prescribed what it thought was evil and also what it thought was virtuous, what actions were right and what were regarded as wrong. This was needed to have order and harmony in the society. Now, differences by itself need not lead to division if you perceive them only as differences. It is only when an element of judgment is attached to them that division or conflicts tends to occur. This happens in the case of moral values too, because we cannot say what is immoral here should be regarded as moral elsewhere. Consequently, it creates a certain amount of contempt and separation between cultures. From the standpoint of traditional Indian values, if we judge the way people in the Western countries live, it does appear superficial and uncultured. The feeling is reciprocal because the values by which the people in the Western countries live are not the same as those taught to us in India. But these differences are on account of subjective perceptions of each culture. There is no absolute moral value in this. So, how do we find an absolute and universal definition of right or wrong when every mind is conditioned by its own culture and we look at an issue from the point of view of its own culture, which is just an accident of birth? So, at the level of action, since right and wrong are subjective, we cannot arrive at universal values. Therefore, we must look a little deeper and ask more fundamental questions like what is virtue? Every religion has talked of virtue, ethics, or values and vice in terms of action. But are virtuous actions by themselves the definition of virtue? This is something that we need to get into a little more detail. Does virtue lie in the performance of what is laid down as virtuous action? Or is it something else to be discovered in one's own consciousness? This question must be asked if we wish to discover in a fundamental sense, what might be universal moral values, or a religious mind, as Krishna used to say, which is not denominational, without labels, not belonging to a particular culture. A further examination shows that virtue is really a state of the mind, a state of one's own consciousness. It cannot be defined in terms of certain righteous actions alone. I would like to illustrate this with a few examples. Using commonly known virtues or moral values, which are accepted all over the world and have been promulgated by every religion. Is kindness a state of mind, a state of one's being, of one's own consciousness, or is it something to be defined in terms of certain actions? No doubt all religions have prescribed kind actions as virtues. For example, we must give alms to poor, we must help weak, old, and infirm. These are all actions that every religion has prescribed. But do they in themselves constitute kindness? To put the question differently, will performance of kind actions, preconceived and defined, bring kindness to our consciousness? If so, then that is the right way to go about it. Then virtue can be brought in from the outside through a deliberate effort. But if it is not so, then the performance of those right actions, though they are not objectionable in itself, but they do not lead to a state of virtue in the mind or in the consciousness. Therefore, these should only be regarded as kind acts and not as substitute for kindness. Otherwise, an illusion is created in our mind. Man has deluded himself in this respect in every religion. Instead of coming upon kindness in his consciousness, he is satisfied with performing certain kind acts. There are therefore vegetarians who will not kill and eat any animal, but who are extremely cruel to animals and human beings. They don't eat meat because they learn to be vegetarians as a habit acquired from childhood. Similarly, there are rich people who have amassed huge wealth many times through wrongful means, but they give alms to beggars, give donations to religious places, and it makes them feel they are kind souls. We also feel the same, when in actuality they may not be. I'm not objecting to kind acts being performed by, but simply as to the illusions that may be associated with it. On the other hand, if there is kindness in our consciousness, if that is the quality of our mind and heart, it will express itself in every relationship. It won't be that there is kindness in one relationship, but cruelty in another. So we must distinguish between acts of virtue and virtue itself. Let me take another example. The ideal of non-violence. If we are violent from within, given to ambition, anger, jealousy, and self-centeredness, is it possible to practice non-violence and end the violence from within, from our consciousness? What does the practice of non-violence imply? We have to define what non-violence is. If we define it as not hitting anybody, it means we can feel hateful of another person, abuse him inwardly, look down upon him, but we don't hit him. This is a very trivial and rather convenient definition of nonviolence. This becomes a form of hypocrisy. This is dishonesty, where we are presenting ourselves outwardly something different, which internally we are not. This practice leads to other moral values being violated, like truthfulness and honesty. Therefore, it is not possible to practice non-violence unless we are non-violent internally. The practice of non-violence outwardly will not change the violence within us for the simple reason that we are dealing only with the symptoms without preventing the cause of the disorder. Unless we observe ourselves deeply and discover the causation of violence in the psyche or consciousness and eliminate them, we may remain violent. In the same way, we have formed pair of opposites, and mankind all over the world has struggled with opposites, trying to cultivate virtue as opposite to vice. If we have fear, we try to cultivate courage. But if there is ending of fear, then there is no need to cultivate courage. In the first option, we are dealing only with outer actions, which are mere symptoms. Therefore, is it possible to come upon virtue in the consciousness so that there is no need to cultivate it outwardly? We must examine this. If we examine all disorders in our consciousness, such as violence, hatred, jealousy, fear, etc., then we say that they all have a cause, and that cause has to be deeply understood, observed, and eliminated. We cannot get rid of them simply by practicing opposites. This does not mean that self control should not be exercised. It is like the order created in society by government through police, judiciary, etc., which is certainly desirable, but it does not bring freedom, as Krishna used to say, as transformation. Every religion has tried to create a conscience, tried to define certain moral values, and then drum them into children as they grow up in that culture. And we feel guilty if we don't practice them and feel that we have fallen into vice. It is this conditioning that makes us feel guilty. The conscience is normally highly regarded in society. But is that conscience also not a form of conditioning? All this external control has led human beings lead a fragmented life, which is hypocrisy. The conscience becomes something that bothers us, and therefore we find a way of satisfying it. We can therefore accept definitions that going to temple is being religious, and once we do it, we feel we are religious, holy person. All religions, all societies would accept certain virtues as bringing about right action. But right action has to be defined as that which comes from a virtuous state of mind. Otherwise, we cannot know right action. Krishna gave a talk at United Nations in 1984 in which he explained about violence between nations and so on. At the end of the talk, someone in the audience asked him, "You have talked about non-violence, but what should you do if a robber attacks you?" And his answer was, "Sir, first let first learn to live peacefully, not for 1 day or 2 days, but for 20 years. Then when a robber attacks you, you will know what is the right thing to do." This is not an evasive answer. Unfortunately, we want quick results. But virtue is byproduct of understanding. And as we all know, understanding comes not through books, not through a guru or a teacher. These can only serve to create the questions in our mind. How we relate to that question, what we learn from that question, is all a process of learning for which each of us is personally responsible. We don't have to believe this. We can just watch it in our own lives. Can we ask fundamental questions without looking for shortcuts? As we must. If we are seeking truth, then there are no shortcuts. So we can regard virtue as order in our consciousness, and this occurs only when disorder is eliminated. not by forceful imposition of order, but by deeply understanding, staying with the disorder, knowing its causation, and then eliminating it. Now, this elimination is not a process of will, it comes through understanding. This requires a lot of patience, patient investigation and observation of ourselves in all our relationships. Uh, I will take a pause here and I want to share two passages from Krishna. One is from Urgency of Change, and the other is from a talk that Krishna gave in Brazil on 4th May 1935. So please bear with me. I'm trying to share this, and then we'll watch a small video, short video for about 10 minutes. It's a question and answer session with Krishna. And after that, we'll pause, and if there are questions, maybe we can answer together. So I'll just try and share what I want to share. Let me try to share this.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, you can read the passage if it is not possible.
Okay. Let me try one more time, and if it's not possible, then I'll do that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can you see this?
Yeah, yeah. We are able to see that.
Okay. So
Now it is. We can see and read it.
okay. So somebody asked me, what is what is it to be virtuous? What makes one act righteously? What is the foundation of morality? How do I know virtue without struggling for it? Is it an end in itself? Krishmurti, can we discard the morality of society, which is really quite immoral? Its morality has become respectable, approved by religious sanctions, and the morality of counter-revolution also soon becomes as immoral and respectable as that of well-established society. This morality is to go to war, to kill, to be aggressive, to seek power, to give hate its place. It is all the cruelty and injustice of established authority. This is not moral. But can one actually say that it is not moral? Because we are part of this society, whether we are conscious of it or not. Social morality is our morality. And can we easily put it aside? The ease with which we put it aside is the sign of our morality, not the effort it costs us to put it aside, not the reward, not the punishment for this effort, but the consummate ease with which we discard it. If our behavior is directed by the environment in which we live, controlled and shaped by it, then it is mechanical and heavily conditioned. And if our behavior is the outcome of our own conditioned response, is it moral? If your action is based on fear and reward, is it righteous? If you behave rightly according to some ideological concept or principle, can that action be regarded as virtuous? So we must begin to find out how deeply we have discarded the morality of authority, imitation, conformity, and obedience. Isn't fear the basis for morality? Unless these questions are fundamentally answered for oneself, one cannot know what is it to be truly virtuous. As we said, with what ease you come out of this hypocrisy is of the greatest importance. If you merely disregard it, it doesn't indicate that you are moral. You might be merely psychopathic. If you live a life of routine and contentment, that is not moral either. The morality of the saint who conforms and follows the well established tradition of sainthood is obviously not morality. So one can see that any conformity to a pattern, whether or not it is sanctioned by tradition, is not righteous behavior. Only one freedom, only out of freedom can come virtue. Can one free oneself with great skill from this network of what is considered moral? Skill in action comes with freedom, and so virtue. This is from Urgency of Change. I would like to read one more quote which I like. This is from Krishnaji's talk, third public talk of Krishnaji at Rio de Janeiro, 4th May 1935. Remember, he was just 40 years old then. And the question was, you seem to deny the value of discipline and moral standards. Will not life be a chaos without discipline and morality? This is what Krishnaji said. We have turned morality and discipline into a shelter for our own protection, without any deep significance, without any reality. Are there not wars, ruthless exploitation, utter chaos in the world in spite of your disciplines, your religions, your rigid frames of morality? So let us look into this structure of morality and discipline that we have built up and which is exploited us, which has exploited us, which is destroying human intelligence. In the very examination of this closed structure of morality and discipline, with great care and without prejudice, you will begin to understand and develop that true morality which cannot be systematized, petrified. The morality, the discipline that you have now is based on the individual's search for his own safety, security through religion and economic exploitation. You may talk about love and brotherhood on Sundays, but on Mondays, you exploit others in your various occupations. Religion, morality, discipline merely act as a cover for hypocrisy. Such a morality, from my point of view, is immoral. As you ruthlessly seek economic security, out of which is born a morality suited for that purpose, so you have created religions all over the world which promise you immortality through their close and peculiar disciplines and moralities. As long as this closed morality exists, there must be wars and exploitation. There cannot be real love of man. This morality, this discipline is really based on egotism and the ruthless search for individual security. When the mind frees itself from this center of limited consciousness, which is based on self-encouragement, there, then there comes the exquisite and delicate adjustment to life, which does not demand rules and regulations, but which is consummately intelligent, expressing itself in the integrated action of true discernment. Now, I'll share a video, uh, and after the video is over, then we can uh, have a question answer session. Can you see it?
Yeah,
Okay,
we can see it.
okay, okay.
Can humanity survive without a universal code of morality, which is true for all times and in all climates? Can an earnest man discover this way of life by his own research and goodwill? Can humanity survive without a universal code of morality, which is true to all times and all climates? Can an earnest man discover this way of life by his own reason and goodwill? Are you tired? What is universal morality? This is again a supposition, right? It says, can humanity survive without? Can you survive? Because you are humanity. You understand my question? You, oh God, must I go through all this? Aren't you like the rest of humanity? You may be short, dark, purple, white, pink, or whatever pigment, color of the pigment is. Aren't you like the rest of the world? You may have a different profession. You may have a dark hair, blonde, purple. You can dye it any color you like. Aren't you like the rest of mankind? Because you suffer, you go through agonies, worries, live a very, very superficial life. Occasionally jolted out of that by sorrow or fear. And your neighbor, whether it be very, very close or thousands of miles away, goes through the same thing in a different way. Follows with his wife as you do. You know when something is serious being said. And they do the same. So you are similar. Or you are the rest of humanity. I know you won't believe all this, that's why to you this is not a truth. Because you are being conditioned to individualism. All your religions, your physical condition says that you are separate soul, separate human being, separate consciousness, that your brain is separate from any other brain. You've been conditioned to it. And one cannot understand that you, as a human being, are like every other human being on earth, psychologically. They all go through, every human being goes through death or knows death, or somebody has died in his family. And there is sorrow. This sorrow is common to all mankind. You may suffer from disease and have sorrow, or another have sorrow through death, of another's death, or the sorrow of ignorance, or the sorrow of limited knowledge. We all go through this. There is not one single human being on earth who has not had this. Pain, lack of fulfillment and its sorrow, the desire to fulfill, the desire to have roots in something and not finding it, the desire, the man who can never go in a nice car, the villager. There is sorrow under every stone and every human being. So you are not different from other human beings. So you are not individuals. Yes, sorrow is a hard pill to swallow. You won't like it. So you are the rest of humanity. You are humanity. If you are immoral, if you are corrupt because you are of self-interest, you are adding to the misery of the rest of mankind. Don't agree with this, that there's theory, but if you set about to see how deeply you can wipe, if the brain can wipe away its self-interest. Self-interest is one of the most deceiving things because it can hide under everything. Politics, in religion, in prayer, in puja, in rituals. It can hide in a family and so on. It is so cunning, so deceptive. And you can't trace all the ways of its hidden ways. Nobody can, because far too subtle. But when there is the importance and the urgency to see the nature of the self and its interest, when there is perception of which I was talking about, which is to see things as they are, psychologically inwardly, not run away, not suppress, not transmute it, rational. When you observe the thing without any movement of thought, then that glimpse of the truth will wipe away all the self-interest. Gentleman asks, if sorrow is common to all of us, why don't we have love? Love, which is also common to all of us. We haven't got it. Do you love your wife? I'm not asking you personally. Do you love that tree? In India and elsewhere, they don't know what love is. Don't say it's common. You worship. You are devoted. Go to temples. You pay. There's a temple in Shripati, which every third day $1 million. Think of the brutality of it. And you won't mend the village dirt, take away. So we have no common love. We have no love. Face it. That's a good question to ask, but it has no meaning. You may be sympathetic, kind, and even perhaps generous, which I question too. Charity. Give something to another if you have more of it. If you have more money, give it to somebody, a little bit of it. You won't do that either. And you talk about love. God, don't use that word. Don't. It's the most sacred thing on earth if you have.
So maybe Harshad Bhai and Vijay ji, they can make some brief observations and then we take questions.
Thank you.
Sir, this is
Harshad.
okay?
Thank you. Yeah. Harshad, sir, please. Please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Are you able to hear?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. Yes, very interesting. And I like to relate my own experience when I went to America. I had lived in Gujarat only. I had not even traveled outside Gujarat. I had studied in Gujarati medium school. My English was not good. I did not know anything about America, but I had read Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad. I was interested in Vivekanand and how Vivekanand lived in America, but I did not know the reality of America. And so when I went there, it was a great shock. So many problems. And that kind of feeling that I am Indian, I am Hindu, that conditioning was very strong. And that created many problems, fear and loneliness and all that, and academic, financial problems, and so many problems. And that slowly all these problems were over, like academic problems, financial problems, food, climate, and everything fine, except that this idea still remain that I am a Hindu, I am an Indian, and I was looking at people as if they are different. They are American, Chinese, and so on. And in such a state, I came across a book of Krishnamurti, and he was describing the human situation. That he was saying that you are not Indian, Hindu, you are a human being, and what is happening inside you, the same thing is happening in all human beings. So when I read that and I said, oh, I am not the only one who is feeling like this, lonely and isolated and thinking about future, creating fear, all that. So when I started, after reading Krishnamurti, I begin to look outside also, because when you are occupied with your own problems, you don't see even outside very clearly. So when I started looking inside, and I found that what Krishnamurti was saying was true, I also begin to look outside very clearly. And I found that, yes, what Krishnamurti was saying was true. Americans were also lonely in their own country and many, many problems, violence, fear, all that. So when we go deep within ourselves and we come in direct contact with our own thinking from a different uh, s- from a different state than thinking, which can see the thinking very clearly, we begin to understand how problems are coming into existence. And for that, one has to go to the source of thinking itself, how thinking is arising. And when I begin to see that, my mind also begin to be silent and just really observing, and in such a state where one can see everything clearly, even the objects like a tree or a cloud or a human beings, the colors, shapes, and life becomes very, very alive, fully, looking everything fresh, not from thinking, not from the problems, knowledge, and our own problems. So such a thing started happening in my life when I came across a book of Krishnamurti, and I found that yes, he was not telling us to follow some rules, but to look clearly, not even to discipline ourselves like many other teachers say that you have to impose discipline, but the only discipline is here is the learning directly from our own self by looking at thinking itself within ourselves. And that I found a wonderful, a direct way of learning. And then we don't even need Krishnamurti to understand. Once we come in direct touch with our thoughts and feelings and see how it is creating divisions in relationship, how it is creating fear, anger, jealousy, loneliness, then there is a real freedom. And that is can come by looking at ourselves as we are from freshness of looking, not through knowledge, not even through the knowledge acquired by reading Krishnamurti books. And that is what Krishnamurti calls freedom from the known. And that is the real freedom when we can look at everything outside as well as inside in a fresh, non-verbal way. So I have said enough about that. Krishnamurti's teachings are very, very universal, applicable to all human beings, whether they live in Russia or China or America. It has nothing to do with politics or the organized religion and some system of philosophy. It has to do with looking at ourselves as we are, moment by moment, and learning from a direct observation. Okay, I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sai.
Chhabra, sir.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, right. Listening to this discourse, I was reminded of three voices. One voice said, if you see and feel something is right, be on its side, even if you are alone. You're the only one there. The other voice said, that seems right. But the difficulty is your perception of right may vary from my perception of right. So how do we figure out what is really right? And the third voice said, if understanding of what is right is idea driven, is it right at all? So this I wonder whether that this can relate to not only understanding of ethics and morals, but to any existential issue. So we can. This is very brief, and so it's just provoking, just to provoke some reflection on this. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Harish ji, would you like to say something? I don't know if he's around.
Harishji, please come forward.
Yeah, Harish,
Harishji, please come.
unmute yourself. Unmute.
And next, Durga Rani ji. Next speaker for Sunday will say something.
Okay.
If Harishji is not able to do it, please allow Durga Rani ji.
No, Harish.
No.
Okay.
He's unmuted himself.
I have got some raw masala. Okay. Dubey ji has given us a great deal of grist for thinking, and it was highly thought-provoking. I mean, he has somehow covered the entire gamut or spectrum, and any moral dilemma which we might have come across in our life was touched upon by him. But I just want to add something to that. Whatever comes to my mind, one or two things I'm a little surprised. Maybe unless I spaced out, I could not catch it. Along with all these values and ethics comes traits of character. Somebody may impress us, or somebody may come across as a very humble person, and he is not a hypocrite. He is not pretending to be humble, but he is naturally the way, what we call mannerism, or let's say we know personality and persona, that difference. So that trait of character is also there. Now, of course, we are not sitting in judgment. So it is not our job to decide whether somebody is truly humble or not. But yes, we can, in moments of self-observation, we can certainly find out whether we are humble or not. Remembering one thing that Krishnaji has cautioned, that a humble person is not aware of the fact that he is humble. Just like another Indian thinker has said that you never feel that you are carrying quite a lot of weight on your neck. You are all the time you are carrying the skull and head, but you are not aware of that. But the moment you develop headache, then you are very, very conscious of that. So a truly humble person, and what I mean is that a truly virtuous person, somebody, of course, Krishnamurti has said, urgency of change or only revolution somewhere. Humility is the greatest virtue. So a truly virtuous person does not know that he is virtuous. He is naturally like that. Okay. So that is one thing. Second thing is that, so of course, morality and all that, like in values. Of course, we have Indian values. Like in one day, I saw people receiving medals from the President of India, and I saw that every movement they had been trained in, and the way they bowed before the president. The people who are receiving such medals, Padma Shri or whatever, they may not mind it. But I was surprised that you you have to lose quite a bit of your self-dignity. And there is absolutely no difference between you, the way you bow before a king when there used to be kings and queens, and the way you bow before the president, you know. So anyway, what I mean is that, uh, like, so in India, we touch the feet of someone elders, which is considered a good part of good manners and part of our Indian values. But suppose I was meeting British Queen, and if I touched her feet, I'm sure I will be put behind bars. That will be highly outrageous. So as Dubey said, that yes, it varies from place to place. It varies from time to time. About a couple of hundred years ago, if a woman did not, when Sati Pratha was at its peak, and if a woman refused to die with her husband's body, yes, she was not only immoral or unethical, but she was a sinner also. But times have changed. And so the same holds for touchability, untouchability, and all that sort of thing. My point is, uh, you know, let us imagine one thing. Uh, like I can imagine, I'm on a flight, and God forbid, and it crashes. It crashes just near a seashore, and I can see that it has gone into pieces, and dead bodies are floating. And I have somehow swam across. I'm just 50 yards or 50 meters from the seashore, and I managed to swim across to the shore, and I find that I'm an island. Now, I'm alone. And I have heard that this island, which is in the Pacific, is totally uninhabited. And nobody goes there. There is no scientific lab and all that. So it is quite possible that I may never be discovered by any rescue team. Means I have to prepare myself mentally. Now, what will be the set of the values that I would have to live by? What will be the ethics I would follow? I think, will I still be humble? You know, if you just imagine, we find that all our blueprint of or yardstick or the pattern, the structure of value system changes, because all those questions are relevant only in the context of the other person. But now, certain things are very simple. You know, I, whether I am, traveling by train or bus or whatever, whenever I am relating with someone in society, then I have to see to it that I cannot put anybody, somebody else to inconvenience. That I have no right. So we know fairly well which are acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior in society. But in myself, and let me give one more example. I don't know why this example came to my mind. You know, these jihadis and suicide people, they interest me a lot. Sometimes I wonder if I could peep into their mind and really find out for myself what goes on there. Now, I will give you this example. There is a jihadi. His mind has been totally conditioned, brainwashed, programmed, that to purge this earth, to rid this earth of kafirs, that is non-believers in Islam, is a holy act. So this jihad is a pure holy act. And he kills people without any scruple. But mind you one thing, and this is very important, he kills people without any scruple because there is no guilt complex, but he doesn't derive pleasure in killing people. Now, I may kill a mosquito, and every time I kill a mosquito, I feel a certain amount of pleasure. This is very subtle. To my mind, you may put people to inconvenience unknowingly. There is a beautiful saying in the book This Matter of Culture, in which Krishnaji says, love makes no mistake. And then the very next moment, he qualifies his statement. And if it does, it immediately corrects itself. That is sensitivity. So I may not intend to put people to inconvenience, but if I do, that sense of sensitivity forces me to tender an unconditional and unambiguous apology to the person. And if the person is not there, then I feel guilty. I cannot sleep unless I have said sorry to the person. That is sensitivity. Now, so the question is, should we live by the values and ethics or no? We should live by what Krishnaji has taught us, that you are the world is you. If somebody in Somalia suffers, I suffer. Means when I say I suffer, I do not mean to say that I suffer in the same way as Ramakrishna Paramhans suffered when a mother was beating someone and he was getting all the marks on his back, because for him the duality had ceased. I don't mean that. But what I mean is that I see it logically. I see it logically that I cannot put people to inconvenience. And if by mistake, unknowingly I do, I must tender an unconditional apology. And so it is relevant to ask how sensitive we are. Without that sensitivity, love and compassion have absolutely no meaning. And probably if we have that sensitivity and along with that love and compassion, then all this dilemma of morality and ethics, they will take care of themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Durga Rani, please unmute and say.
Do I have
Durga
to,
Rani.
do I have
Yeah,
to respond to this, or I think Harish ji has said very well, but I just want to add that right action doesn't mean that you are always nice to people. That is not the right action. Because, if you know Mr. Sanjeeva Rao, who started the Rajghat Center, and right from the time the land was acquired, that is 1927, he stayed there for 21 years. And Krishnaji, when he came for the first time after the establishment of the school in 1948, he was told that he is running the whole show, and he said that you are attached to the place, you must leave now. So it may be inconvenient to some people, but right action for the organization is the right action. I mean, there is no self-interest involved. If self comes in the play, then of course it's not right action. So, for example, a mother is spanking a child. It may look cruel to somebody else, but maybe that is part of love. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Yes, Durgaji, please.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. First of all, I would really appreciate Vijay ji for bringing in such a deep and core issue of morals, ethics, and values. I think these are the kind of existential and essential questions that keep coming before us, and every situation comes with its own contours. So each of us have to act in that situation. What according to I think these are the challenges life keeps throwing at us, and I think you have covered very beautifully, sir. And so is Hareshwar Singh ji. I think he has also brought out plenty of very valuable points. actually, if you say, like, I just want to, regarding the non-violence, violence and non-violence, I just would like to add, at one place, Krishnaji says, not hurting others. It's not by actions alone. Like, the people who kill others, they might have been indoctrinated from their childhood. They may not be seeing, right, wrong, and these things might not have gone into their head. But okay, that is a different issue entirely. But if a conscious human being, that, I think if you are consciously hurting others, by your gestures and your words, I think that is also violence. Non-violence means not only killing or not killing animals or killing somebody. It's not even that. Even by I think Shruti is one good example. How he tolerated everybody, and he never used to utter a single word about his behavior or conduct or whatever it is. So that thing, I just wanted to remind. And regarding ethics and morals, I think that these are everybody's. You can say the journey, and you can say the grilling that goes inside. And I think that during those situations, the true character and the value of the person that comes out. Whatever understanding he has arrived at, or how he see things, or she sees things. I think this is a lifelong, challenges life throws to us. You have your, the write-up is so beautiful, and so is Hareshwar also has contributed very nice points. That's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Waghmare, please ask.
Dubey sir,
Yes.
whatever you said at the personal level, it is okay. It is fine. But don't you think it is too idealistic? Because if when we are dealing with a society, we see the 5,000 years old our history, people are of having different natures. And to control the society or to remain harmony in the society, you should have the code of conducts, you should have all the norms and all that, so that there is a proper balance and harmony is maintained. So at a personal level, this is fine. Okay, whatever you are saying is right. But when you are dealing with a society, you should have all these norms and all that. Because otherwise, if this literally means that everybody should be enlightened and everybody should be free, then only the society will be very good, or there will be a Ram Rajya. So I think this is what should be. This is not what is. You have to deal with the what is, not with what should be. This becomes too much idealistic. What do you have to say?
I entirely agree with you, sir. We are society. The society is what we are. There's no difference in it. But we are not here to transform the society, because that will be too big a thing to be taken up upon ourselves. But can I begin with myself and question the moral values of the society? Can I be a critic of the moral values? And if I find them that they are really right action, not on the face of it because I'm conditioned and this is the way I was taught when I was a child, but is it the right thing to do? At the societal level, of course, there are government agencies, we have legislatures, we have, judiciary, we have all kinds of things that is happening. I'm not denying that. That is part of it because we can't do that. But let's begin with ourselves.
No, for ourselves, it is okay, sir. For ourselves, yes, whatever you are saying is 100%. I am in agreement with that. There is no doubt. Whatever you said and what Krishnamurti said is perfectly fine. But we have to also look for the society also, because all these, whatever we are morals and ethics and whatever you have talked, those all things have come because of the society, not from the individual point of view, sir. What do you have to say?
Can we question the society? That is what I'm saying, sir.
Yes, definitely. There we are in a consensus. We are having agreement. There is no two opinion about it.
When Krishji started the schools, he said, if our schools can produce 2 children who can turn their back towards money and power, the purpose of establishing these schools will be served. And then somebody asked him, sir, how are your students placed? He said, some of them are disgustingly successful.
Yeah.
So He's not
Then it-
denying success, but we should not run for success. And sir,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
but-
only begin from where we are. We can't do anything else. We have to
It's a
only.
tremendous, it's a
Pradeep
tremendous
Verma,
challenge then, sir.
please,
Yeah.
please ask, please let Pradeep Verma ask his question. Thank
Yes,
you, Waghmare. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Vermaji.
Thank you, sir. Is it audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, yes, very well.
So I will not tell anything about, not even what Krishna ji said, because what Krishna ji said, what he found missing in the society, which should have been there and should be there, for which transformation is required. Always saying that see the things as they are. So right now, around me, things as they are, necessarily we are challenged
So your voice is breaking.
by all sorts of territorial ambitions, terrorism, war, and everything around us is right now, it is very much there. Nobody can deny it. That this is not the thing which is free and nation. Although Krishnamurti said something that country itself is a fragment in the. So is there something like national morality? National morality under the condition when things are like this.
You want me to answer this, sir?
Individual morality, as you have rightly said, and Waghmare also. Please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Individuals,
Dubey
wonderful.
sir, please go
It
ahead
helps.
and answer him. There is no national morality or not? That is the question.
Sir, I don't think any thing jacketed like national morality, Indian morality, these are all divisive. National morality is that as an Indian, I must protect my borders, I must fight with enemy and all that. But I'll go a little away from it and talk about it in a philosophical sense. You know, in the book Meeting Life, somebody asked Krishna, what is total transformation? And he says, sir, when you see dirt on the road, are you moved by it? Can you just pick it up and remove it from there? When you see somebody in pain while you are traveling, are you really affected by it and take him to the hospital? So these are transformations. Can we begin from where we are? That is a challenge he throws. So I think anything when we say national, then it will mean Indian national or American national. Then there's going to be division because their morality could be different than our morality. That's the way I look at it.
Narayan Swami.
Yes, Mr. Narayan Swami. And then we can go to Shakti ji and then Harshad bhai.
But
Narayan Swami, unmute yourself. I think he's not there, perhaps.
Yeah.
So
So then, Shakti.
Shakti, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I just about this question of morality. This reminded me of a passage because these days I am engaging with Pupul Jacker's biography of Krishnamurti ji, about editing it, reading it. And when Pupul ji has gone to Krishnamurti, he in fact told him two things besides others. You know, those things that Harshad ji has been doing. You see, watching thoughts, watching within. And he also told her that can you be alone without books, without anything, without radio? In those days, there used to be radio, without anything like that. And she said, okay. So she did that for a while, I think for 1 month or 2 months. And then Krishnamurti later on asked her that how the things are going on. Very interesting, this connected with this morality. She answered, and see, one thing she said, because she used to play poker. You see, in that people cheat each other. And she said, I have been doing this, watching and all this. And one thing is that now I cannot cheat people in the game. So I'm just sharing it because what Krishnamurti is pointing at is directly connected with some sort of subconscious corrective process. Just that I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harshad Parekh, sir. Harshad Parekh, sir.
Yes.
Harshad Parekh, sir, please.
Yes. I would say that this spiritual field is for very, very few people are really deeply interested in the society. There are all kinds of people, businessmen, politicians, workers, farmers, and very few people are really interested in looking inward and seeing things very clearly. Generally, our mind works at outside things. And so Krishnamurti's teachings, I feel that very, very few people who really want to investigate from where these problems like fear, violence, desire comes, and they really want to look at very, very intensely at the source of our thinking. For such people, Krishnamurti's teachings are beautiful. And the other thing about the violence, that violence exists in all human beings, even in students when they go to school and they have to study many subjects, but they are not interested, but they are forced to study. And so there is a conflict arising between what I have to do and what I am, what I really want to do and what I have to do. That conflict, it creates violence in young people, and you will find that they are breaking things, they are destroying furniture. Even in Krishnamurti school, I have seen that there is a tremendous sense of unrestlessness, no ability to be alone, quiet, enjoy nature. All these qualities are very, very few people. And for such people, whether it is a Upanishad philosophy or Krishnamurti or Zen Buddhism, they are very good. But it is not for the whole society. Society is not interested. People are interested in becoming somebody, gathering more money or power or knowledge, becoming famous. So society is like that. But people who want to go beyond all that, a real freedom, freedom from the self, for such people, whether Krishnamurti or Buddhism or Upanishad, they go very, very deep into the source of everything, all our thinking, feeling. Okay, I finish.
Shiv Kumar, please unmute, and this is the last question. Shiv Kumar, please unmute and ask.
Yeah, I'm audible, right?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah. All right. With respect to these questions about the society, national morality, and other things, all the problems, as we know very clearly, it is created out of the division, out of the ego. Now, any action of mine without understanding myself, without understanding myself, any action of mine will further create more divisions. So the question of doing social work or any other kind of thing will create more problem if I don't have an understanding of myself. That is first thing what I felt. Second thing is like, especially when we talk about morality and things, we always see with respect to human beings. Okay. But when we see the kind of respect we give, kind of attention, all that part, somehow it is misses when we see ants or mosquitoes or plants or other things. We don't some kind of authority is with authority we handle these things, right? Like the way we handle the servants in the houses, the same way we more or less when we deal with plants, when we deal with mosquitoes or the ants or spiders or thing, our behavior is very clearly visible, some kind of superiority working on this, right? So probably I have this question, why this kind of attitude? Okay. When we see the difference between the human beings as well as when we attend to the other creatures other than human beings. Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Dubey sahab, you wanted to comment?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
It's you have to draw a line because even people who are vegetarians, they also eat vegetables, and plants also have life. So where do you draw the line? So certainly, in order to live, you have to take vegetables, you have to eat chapatis or rice or whatever. Similarly, if you're sitting and a mosquito comes and bites you, or an ant comes and bites you, your normal reaction will be to hit it. So we don't feel that life to be as important as maybe killing a chicken or a goat or whatever. So I really don't know what to say of this, because even when you are walking, under your shoes, smaller insects, even unknowingly or unconsciously, they fall under it and get killed. But I think if you intentionally do it, like we do it in case of mosquitoes, I think that is violence. We all do that, but certainly is violence. You are taking away a life because you are getting physically hurt by it and so on. I think this will be my response to it.
Yeah. दोस्त मोहब्बत में कुछ ऐसी नाजुकी भी हकीकत है, महसूस तो कर सकते हो, समझा नहीं सकते.
सही बात है.
So should we finish it?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you very much, Dubey sahab.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Come, let's please close. Please.
And next Sunday we have Durga Rani ji will be speaking to us at 11 o'clock. So you're all welcome to join on 4th of July. Thank you.
Thanks to all.
Thank you. Thanks.